What's up, world? Welcome to another episode of the Linc'd In Podcast. Almost said the Gauntlet Podcast, but the Linc'd In Podcast, the fourth episode, where we're going to be keeping you guys linked in with the Philadelphia Eagles. We got OTAs to talk about this week. We got off-season program. We got position battles, breakout players for offense and defense. Me and Lindy are going to give our predictions for all that stuff. But if you guys are new, please make sure to subscribe to the channel. We're only 5 subscribers from 1,600, and go check out Lindy's channels as well. What's going on, Lindy? How you doing tonight, bro?
Doing a little bit better as the week is ending here. Telling you backstage about some of the issues I was dealing with and the the little bit of a delay that I had on my channel. HVAC went out in the house, so the wife and I had to move down in the basement here. So the studio was a big compromise, but now that stuff is temporarily taken care of, back at it and ready to score again for Sideline Sports here.
Definitely a tough situation to be dealing with, but today is Friday. Happy Friday, everyone.
Right, yeah.
Congrats on everybody getting it through the week. We got some people in the comment section here. Of course, we got my main man, Reaper, who's basically always the first in all my streams. What up, Reaper? How you doing, bro? Then we got Nightings, and then we got BL. What's going on, guys? Appreciate you guys for tuning into the show. So let's get the party started with the latest news, or quote-unquote news, that we heard for this week. And that was Shane Steichen is 100%, without a shadow of a doubt, taking over as the play caller for the Eagles, as he did from mid-season moving forward last season. My thoughts on this are Shane Steichen, obviously he got the run game very much going, more so compared to what it was early in the season. We were more of a pass-happy team. So there was a little bit of an improvement there. Nick Sirianni not really experienced so much in the play calling department. He was not really calling plays with Indianapolis. That was Frank Reich's responsibility. But as an experienced coach, I'm sure that Nick Sirianni is still going to have his say so on what kind of plays and stuff are going to be ran, game plan, all that kind of stuff. If Nick feels as though he needs to take over based off of how things are going, then I'm sure that he's going to be willing to step in to do that. But it's a great partnership that they have between Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen and all the other offensive coaches on the staff. They're going to get things going, and they got a lot much better players to use and utilize in the offense. The addition of A.J. Brown and, DeVonta Smith's there, and Quez Watkins and Goddard, Sanders, the list goes on and on. So it's definitely going to be very unique in what we see with the offense. But I think you don't want to read too much into, well, he's calling the plays. Is that a bad thing? Does it say something bad about Nick Sirianni? I don't think it says something bad about him. I think Nick and him have a good partnership, and they're going to make things happen together. And it's just going to be interesting to see how they go about it. And when it comes to preparing the team and coming up with the best plays that's going to put the team in a position to be really successful.
Yeah, I think, and we've seen plenty of examples over the years in the tenure of Doug Peterson and how sometimes he was overwhelmed in terms of play calling and trying to implement others in collaboration with that job as well. And, we've seen the Press Taylor, experiment not work out very well for various reasons. I think the old receivers coach was involved there. But when you talk about, Mike Rowe, but when you talk about Sirianni and what he has wanted to create here since day one, part of the memo was just having that connection and affiliation with the people that he's bringing in around him, where, whether it's with Shane Steichen, where they have had 4 previous years experience together, with the Chargers, and just bringing over the same mindset that he picked up where he left off with the Indianapolis Colts, and, being with Jonathan Gannon for a little bit of time over there. But it's more so of the importance of that. Shane Steichen was brought in here for a reason, and it's been a while since the Eagles have had a true offensive coordinator, in the coaching staff helping out the head coach. As I have brought up Doug Peterson, the the correlation there is that, Shane is here to take some of those stresses off of Sirianni, where he already has a lot of responsibilities as a head coach. Now, this isn't to say that it's, his involvement in the offense is going to be completely nixed, as Steichen has said in the press conference, I believe yesterday or today, talking about that, Sirianni is still going to have a stamp on things, and if Nick wants a different look at some point in time during the game, depending on situations, then, he's going to voice his opinion. And Shane said that he would call what Sirianni wants at that point in time. But nonetheless, it's good to have that type of leadership tandem as a pairing, instead of multiple voices in terms of play calling, that as the failed experiments of the past.
Yeah, definitely a rough experiment in the past with like all the assistants, or whatever you call them. What were they called? Like offensive consultants.
2020.
I didn't even know what the hell like the plan was with all those guys that were brought in. I mean, Martin Mordenweg was a part of the
Mordenweg, Rich Scangarello, and they had these.
He was another failed offensive coordinator of the Eagles back in the day. So it was just a yikes experiment that didn't work out. But obviously with Doug going to Jacksonville, I hope he does a good job with them. But it just wasn't shaking. It just wasn't shaking doing all that kind of stuff in Philly. I think once we lost Frank Reich, there was a little bit of issues. Mike Groh. I mean, we had Mike Groh that said he didn't know how to utilize Golden Tate that we traded a third-round pick for. Like, if you don't know how to utilize a guy that you just traded for, then I just really don't know why you're here in the first place as offensive coordinator. Yep. But that's another story. It's a new chapter. It's a new era. I think that the biggest thing with these two guys, it's going to be like two sets of eyes. So if Nick sees something that he wants to attack, then maybe he'll bring it up to Shane, or maybe Shane will say, we're going up against a team that has a really good run defense. So obviously, we do have a great offensive line. We have a good running game, but, this is a team that's going to be bringing up more guys in the box. And we got Devontae Smith and we got A.J. Brown. So maybe we can do something to attack these guys down the field. But I definitely think that this is going to be a good partnership. We got another comment from Nightings here. So, oh, yeah, I love the offense. And also Hurts and Smith looked excellent today in OTAs, which does bring us back to our next topic that we're going to be discussing here on the show tonight, which is the Eagles' offensive or the offseason program. And speaking of the offense was cooking and the offense was humming. It wasn't a very long practice today because, the Eagles are trying to not go too crazy in OTAs, and they'll probably be more so ramped up when it gets to training camp, which is to be expected. But, you got guys like Brandon Graham that's coming off injuries, so they're trying not to, work these guys to death in just an off-season program, which I totally understand. But as far as how the offense looked, it was definitely very encouraging to hear some of the things that we heard, especially about Jalen Hurts, because Jalen Hurts has, obviously he has a bunch of doubters. He has a bunch of haters that say he can't be good enough. He's not going to get the job done. He's not a good quarterback.
Here we go.
All this other stuff. But, from what I saw an interview that Nick Sirianni did after the practice with Sal Paolantonio from ESPN. He's working out in California and all these different states, working with these different quarterback coaches and whatnot. So the biggest thing that he's been working on to take his game to the next level is the fundamentals. So what he's really been focusing on is his release. That's one of the biggest things he's been focused on. And the other thing is his footwork, planting his feet right, not taking too many step back on the drop back, being smooth with it, getting into a nice rhythm, and then having that really good release. He's definitely been trying to work on that and improve that, because that's going to help him with his accuracy, putting the ball where it needs to be. So that's definitely great, really encouraging. And then Jalen also had a big day today. It pretty much was cooking the defense. Devontae Smith had a big touchdown today. He had some big plays. AJ had some plays as well. So, it was a good sign with the offense. The offense had their great moments today. And this offseason program is just going to be an opportunity for the guys to keep getting those reps. And as far as guys not showing up, a lot of people make a big deal about that. But you got to understand, it's a voluntary program. It's great if guys are there, which I'm very happy guys are there. But, not all the guys are going to be there. And when there's not all the guys showing up, it gives an opportunity for dudes that are further on the depth chart to kind of get in and prove what they can do. So I think there's good things with it. I just don't think that it's something that everyone needs to read too much into with the OTA program, but it's definitely a good chance to build some chemistry and some camaraderie going into the season.
Yeah, and speaking of BG, he looks like that Achilles injury has never happened. He has a pretty good deal of explosiveness, especially at 33, 34 years old going into the season. He looks fantastic, and
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, and this is something else that Shane Steichen alluded to in his press conference. I mean, this is really the first time for Jalen Hurts since high school to be in the same offensive structure, and what that does, how important that is for a quarterback to be able to have the same terminology, to have the same playbook for that matter, how that is structured, how it is set up. And now when you add better players into the mix that the defense has to be honest for, well, that could very well open up the playbook a lot more than anticipated the first time. And it's and talking about what Hurts has been doing in the offseason with his throwing mechanics and whatnot, through some analysis that I have been reading, it has been said that his throwing motion, I think, is a little bit tighter instead of a little more outside, where it can be it can be jagged and show a bit of a timing problem if inaccuracy, so to speak. So if he has a tighter throwing motion, you have to expect that he's going to be a lot faster. And one of the biggest things that we have been talking about with the quarterback is timing and anticipation. Well, those three things right there should go together very well. The other thing that was pointed out was that he is a lot more comfortable. He's more in rhythm. But again, these OTAs, you got to take them with a grain of salt. There's a mixture of voluntary ones. There's a mixture of mandatory ones. So don't take this as the final product by all means. Training camp doesn't officially start until next month. This is one opportunity for these players to get in and get some really good conditioning on the field type of work, and in any kind of offensive drills such as 7-on-7s or 11-on-11s. 7-on-7s is what they've been predominantly running, and offenses are already at an advantage from that standpoint because it's just a lot of one-on-one single coverage with these receivers. But you still want to hear stuff like that, and whether it's Devontae Smith or AJ Brown, actually beating their man, especially the first string corners and Bradbury and Darius Slay. You want to hear stuff like that because it's going to get others. It's going to get others excited about, oh, well, wait a minute, Devontae Smith going into year 2. Now you pair him with A.J. Brown, and if they're doing it to some of the best guys in the business, from a skill standpoint in our cornerback room, then that just elevates the bar in us wanting week 1 to get here faster than expected. Aside from that, you have guys that are, participating right now, taking advantage of some players that aren't there. Quez Watkins, Jalen Reagor, guys like that, Zach Pascal, who did not participate, who were not there. Deion Kane was actually showing some, developing some trust with Hurts coming out of the slot. So, that's another name that has been noted to keep an eye on during training camp. But overall, it's just a good experience to see these guys on the field and, developing these connections with their quarterback from a consistency standpoint in terms of the same offense.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And, another thing about this offseason, program after the practice today, AJ Brown came out and it was at the press conference, and they're asking him about, obviously the offense had a big day and all that stuff, but AJ says that he believes that he's not the only number one wide receiver on this football team. He also believes that Devontae Smith is also just as good as him and just as much of a number one wide receiver. So he was quoted as saying he expects Smitty to dominate against opposing defenses, because if they line up the number one cornerback against AJ, then obviously you would assume they were going to put up the number two corner against Devontae Smith. And, obviously Devontae had a good rookie season last year, 916 yards for him as a rookie and 5 touchdowns. So you only expect him to get better, and he's got a nasty release off the line of scrimmage. He's got good hands. His catch rate, I know that he doesn't look like the biggest receiver, but when you watch him play, you see that he can go up and make like those tough catches like you saw him do against his Alabama teammate, Patrick Surtain. I mean, Surtain really couldn't have covered that ball any better than what he did, but somehow Devontae, he just goes up and does that. And all the plays he made with getting the ball on the toe drag swag, catching the ball on the sideline. He had several plays like that throughout the season. So he's just very, very technical with what he does. And he's going to do serious damage, I think, to opposing defenses this season. And AJ, he's also going to do damage to opposing defenses. So I think those two together is really the best case scenario. When we were looking at this whole offseason, we were saying, Devontae Smith he's a number one receiver. There's no question about it. What we were saying is not, can we go get a superstar receiver like AJ Brown? We weren't even talking about that. We're just saying, listen, man, obviously Quez is a good receiver. Jalen Reagor just hasn't been good enough. We need another guy that can just, do his thing. Somebody like, Robert Woods was a name that was coming up. Just guys that are not really great receivers, but just guys that are solid, can do their thing. But now that you got a guy that is extremely dynamic with AJ, and you already have a youngster that's super dynamic with Devontae Smith, it's just a completely different dynamic for the offense. And I think that what this is telling me is that the Eagles, while their strength is going to continue to be running the football, they're going to try to get this passing game going, and they're going to try to get Jalen Hurts in a rhythm with some easy completions to Devontae, to AJ. It's going to open everything else up. So when you're looking at it, you got to be excited. And you got to say, hey, this offense, as long as Jalen takes another step as a quarterback, this offense has potential to be a top 10-ish offense and can really light up the scoreboard and put up a lot of points.
Obviously, with the way that this offensive line is constructed, you're not putting him in there for this team to throw 35 to 40 times on a weekly basis. When you build an offensive line as athletic as ours, they want to be involved in going down the field and pretty much blocking for their running back, in stride on the sideline, wherever the play is called for, as we have seen, numerous examples of some of Miles Sanders' home run hitters, especially victimizing the Saints twice. And, I remember the Buffalo Bills run that he had back in 2019 as a rookie. When the ball, at certain points when the ball is in Miles' hands, he is a home run waiting to happen if you put him and he puts himself in that situation. But nonetheless, let's not get it twisted here with Devontae Smith. Going into year 2, he has already been battle tested to a degree. Going into the start of last year, there was a lot of cases where he was facing the number one corner just because of the lack of respect, if you will, with defenses against our wide receiver core. Well, if all they really knew was about Dallas Goedert and how much of a threat he can be, and again, Devontae Smith as a rookie was no slouch, but when you add AJ Brown into that mix, well, it's kind of a catch-22 for the defense at that point, because you can't double cover everybody. And we understand that there's only one football, but when you have now a official trio that you could take advantage of, especially in 11 personnel, and you want to send Goddard, Smith, and AJ out there, or however you want to construct it, it just opens a mound of opportunity. And, like I said, the defense isn't going to be able to cover everybody. Granted, there's only one football, but somebody is going to be open just because of adding that extra threat on the offensive side of the football that a defense has to respect, regardless of what they think of the quarterback or not. And again, that's the biggest, that's the biggest talk of the town right now, is what is Hurts going to look like at the start of week 1? But you can't say that he doesn't have weapons now. Well, not to say that he didn't last year. He did. There was just inconsistency. But, they have done what they should have for a developing third-year quarterback for only in this system consecutively the second time.
Yeah, man. Offensively, I'm just really excited to see the progression with Jalen Hurts, having all these guys around him. I mean, we've seen the effect that, whether it's your former teammate, you're seeing it now. Derek Carr and Devontae Adams rejoining together, Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, whether they're like really good friends or they had a history before playing with each other. I think that there is going to be a Jamar Chase effect with AJ coming into the building. And there's already a little bit of that kind of effect with, Smitty and Jalen being former Alabama teammates. So I feel like chemistry is just going to keep getting better and better and better and better with these guys. And then, the other guys around them, I think, is just going to come to a point where it's going to be, who's going to be the forgotten man that no one's even, thinking about. When defenses are game planning to stop this offense, are they going to be game planning for Quez Watkins? I'm not so sure. I'm sure they'll say, hey, this guy's really fast and he can burn us down the field. But, I'm not going to be thinking about Quez, not because he's good, but because, you got Devontae and you got AJ out there. That's the two biggest things for this team, because in the years of past, we haven't been able to say, yeah, you know what? This receiving core is good. Like, you got to watch out for this receiving core. We haven't been able to say that in quite some time. We had the year where we had Alshon, we had Torrey Smith, and Nelson Aguilar had a resurgence. But that was nothing like, I would say, back in the day. I would probably say this is the best overall receiving core that we've had since Deshaun Jackson, Jeremy Maclin, and probably in that era. That's what I would think. So this offense has potential to be one of the top offenses in the league. And as long as we don't, do anything stupid and try to beat ourselves, there are a lot of winnable games on the schedule. There's no reason we can't be a division winner and, host a home playoff game and hopefully advance at least one round in the playoffs this season.
Do you think one thing people will try to clap back at is if there's talk of Smitty being the number one, would they say that, oh, well then why did we pay A.J. Brown $100 million for 4 years if the transition's going to actually be Devontae Smith as the number one? Well, why did they make that kind of commitment to A.J. Brown? Well, I mean, obviously part of it is the relationship that he has with the quarterback that you can't put a price on. But at the same time, if you're going to help your number one receiver, then you got to have somebody competent on the other side that is going to relieve him of some of those worse matchups and allow a guy like Smith to take advantage of a weaker corner because of the physicality that A.J. Brown brings to the table. So I think that's one thing that you can look out for over the course of the year. If for whatever reason something doesn't meet expectations between the two receivers, you can probably hear a little bit of that. And of course the criticism is going to be there because that's, it's Philadelphia. That's, that's what we're about.
Right. No place
because we only want we only want the best for this football team. But yeah, that's just something that I got in the back of my mind.
Yeah, and with all due respect, I think that's a ridiculous question. I mean, how are you going to say?
Yeah, right.
I'm not saying because of what I'm not saying you're ridiculous for asking it, but
Yeah.
anyone that has that mindset that's like, if you talk to all 32 teams in the league, or if you talk to the teams that have a really good wide receiver already,
Mm-hmm.
You can't sit here and tell me that if they had a chance to add one that was just as good or possibly even better, then they wouldn't take that opportunity. If the Minnesota Vikings could get a guy that was on par or close to on par with Justin Jefferson, then they would absolutely do it. There's no question about it. If, obviously the Bengals, their receiving core is loaded, but if they had a chance to get somebody that's just as good as Jamar Chase, then they would also do that. So it's just about how many weapons can you put around your quarterback, especially when your quarterback is still on a rookie contract and you don't have to pay him like a high amount of salary. That gives you the more flexibility to go get your AJ Browns of the world and go get more pieces on defense as well. Your Hassan Reddick type of signings as well to bolster up the defense. So I feel like this move that we did to get AJ Brown was saying, hey, you know what? Regardless of what the narratives people are pushing about Jalen Hurts is the quarterback that we're committed to at least for this season. And if he really shines and does what a lot of people think he can do, then he's going to continue to be that guy for this team. And they're going to, just keep building more pieces around him to keep getting better because he is hungry. Like Shane Steichen said, he hasn't been around a guy that has like this mentality, this work ethic. There's not really an off season for him. He's always thinking about football. He's always talking about football. He's always trying to get better. So these guys were brought in to help make that transition even easier for him. So definitely think that anyone that questions, is there going to be a rift or something because we brought in another good wide receiver, they don't. I really question if you know what you're talking about, with all due respect. But what's going on, Jeremiah? Thanks for tuning into the show, bro. So now that we've got all that stuff out of the way, kind of like an OTA conversation, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, AJ having a lot of high praise for him. Definitely love to see it. This next topic is going to be really interesting, though, but something to keep an eye on for this season, not only going into training camp, but even right now during OTAs. Because like I mentioned earlier, there's not all the guys are showing up right now because obviously it is voluntary. But when there are not high caliber guys coming in because it's voluntary and they don't have to be there, it kind of opens the door for some of these other guys to raise some eyebrows. Like you mentioned with someone like Deion Kane, with some of these guys that are lower on the depth chart that we're not really going to see them get as many reps probably in training camp as they would get right now. So right now it kind of gives them an opportunity to raise some eyebrows a little bit and show what they can do. And then when it gets to training camp and preseason, when they get to play their snaps, then maybe, that's a chance for them to separate themselves. So that's what I'm looking at. And when it comes to the biggest position battles, I think clearly the safety battle is gonna be big. You have Kayvon Wallace versus Marcus Epps. Marcus Epps was getting most of the first team reps today at the OTA practices. So it's going to be very interesting between those two, because when we were getting Kayvon Wallace, we were very excited about it because obviously he's from Clemson, which was a very big, successful school that was, going into college playoffs. The guy had a high motor. He was always, making big plays for that Clemson defense. But in the NFL, it just hasn't worked out for him. Is part of it about coaching? Yes, I do think part of it's about coaching, but he has to go out this season and, he has to prove that he can do something, because that safety position is wide open. So just as Marcus Epps is, trying to prove himself, I think Kayvon Wallace has to prove himself as well, because that position's not locked up by any means. I don't think Marcus Epps has that position locked up. So I feel like Kayvon Wallace has a chance to come in and say, hey, you know what? I know that there's a big question mark for this position, but I want to prove that I'm a guy that can step in and be a leader on that back end of the defense, make some big plays. I got a high motor. I can do some damage if I get my opportunity. But when he gets his opportunity, he got to take advantage of it, man. And there's no more screwing around. I know it's his third season, but this is a position that's kind of a big question mark right now. And we got to see how this plays out. Kayvon Wallace versus Marcus Epps, definitely one of the battles that I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out for this season.
Yeah, certainly. I think it's the third year for both players, respectively, because I know that Marcus was claimed off of the waiver wire from the Minnesota Vikings. The Eagles claimed him. He was a former sixth rounder, and in regards to Kayvon Wallace, I mean, we spent the fourth round pick on him too, and him coming out of Clemson and wearing the captain's number and everything, and all the excitement that we had, and I think there's a relation there that he is. I think he's best friends with what is it? Not Brian Dawkins, not one of his children, but there's something along the lines that there's a friendship there involved.
Brian Dawkins' son is going to Clemson. I think he's enrolled in Clemson right now.
Yeah, I was going to say I thought so, because that was one of the developing stories when we drafted him. But nonetheless, I mean, this is a situation that Kayvon would want to be in, especially when you have special team contributors coming into the second string as well, and Andre Sachere and him were a part of the second string in the OTAs, and first string was Marcus Epps and Anthony Harris. Well, I think one of the biggest things for Kayvon is that he needs to get a lot more physical. In terms of his tackling ability. I mean, granted, a lot of people can't handle bringing down George Kittle by themselves, but we just seen a lot of replays of Kayvon being just tossed like a rag doll. Like, he just doesn't have that. He doesn't have that physicality to him, I think, and neither does Marcus Epps to a degree. But Marcus is more. He has more of that aggressive type of punch where he's not afraid to go in there and smack the ball out of a receiver's hands, and he has made the most of what little snaps that he has received from a defensive standpoint. And that's really how it works. You go between defense and you go between special teams, and if you start to show something, you're getting the opportunity to be given defensive snaps, and if you're one that makes the most out of those, then you're going to start to see more you're going to start to see more action on the first string, and yeah, I think I'm good with that position battle there. Between Marcus Epps and Kayvon Wallace at safety, you could very well argue the same thing from the running back standpoint on the offensive side of the ball. And yeah, like you said with Marcus Epps and him not having his spot locked down. God, call me crazy, but I don't necessarily think Miles has his locked up either. If I'm being honest, I don't necessarily think he has his locked up either. Best ability is availability for him, and he has shown to be inconsistent with that. The biggest thing for me going into this year is I need to see him play at least 14 or 15 games. The most he can miss for me is 2. To that point, I think he's averaging about 11 or 12 games. And yeah, that's pretty close. That's a pretty close gap that I'm describing there. But nonetheless, when the team invests a second round pick in you, especially for your skill set, and there's LaShawn McCoy comparisons, and Shady was the last one that the Eagles have given a contract to, so Philly isn't necessarily, we're not completely known for not paying running backs, since Shady, was the last one to get a contract, but it was well deserved. But in the case of Miles, we have heard countless times, during the offseason and a little bit last year, that they're trying to continue to feature Kenny Gainwell a lot more in this offense, especially especially being that he's more proficient as a pass catcher than Miles is, and that's a big part. That's a
Good
big
point.
part of this West Coast style of offense that Sirianni and Steichen are trying to implement. So, yeah, I mean, don't be surprised if a guy like Kenny Gainwell starts to, share some of the first team reps with the offense and trying to get him, more affiliated with what they want to do from that standpoint. I mean, granted, it is a committee at the end of the day, but yeah, call me crazy, but I would not be surprised.
Definitely think that's an interesting one because Miles seems pretty pissed off right now. From what I've seen him say during the offseason, he had an interview when he was working out a few months ago or so. He's saying, I see everybody talking about me, and I just want to prove people wrong that I can be the guy. So he does have the competitive edge on his shoulders. So I hope that, everything works out for him and he's able to stay healthy, like you said, because that's a big thing. He can play football. We know he's a good football player. We know he's explosive and he can do some damage. But he just, it's always something here, hamstring here, ankle there. It always seems to be something that's, not really as much of a quote unquote bad injury, but what he always gets is these injuries that are just lingering.
They're nagging. Yeah.
He'll miss a couple games, and then when he comes back, we're like, oh, okay, well, he's back, and we'll see what he can do now. But then it appears to be affecting him even longer than we had anticipated, and now it becomes an issue. And Kenny Gainwell had a good season for what it's worth last year. He got in the end zone quite a few times. I think he had 5 or 6 touchdowns last year. I think he had 500-plus yards from scrimmage. So he is a threat both out of the backfield. And, even Kenny Gainwell himself has said that he wants to go crazy as well. So there is a little bit of pressure on Miles Sanders in a contract year to do some damage here. So I definitely think that running back position is going to be by committee, though. What I would be more concerned about is, who's gonna take over as that power running back of this team, because Jordan Howard, for what it's worth, he did some good things last year as well. So I'm wondering which one of these guys is going to step up into that role, because obviously Kenny Gainwell and Miles Sanders are not the biggest guys, and we got a new co-host here apparently. On the show, but running back definitely interesting. But another one I would throw at you: how about tight end? Because we've had this discussion before.
Yeah.
But every year, leading to this year, of course, it's always been about Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz, and having one of the best tight end duos in the league. It's never been about, okay, we got Goddard, but who's going to be that second guy behind him? Is it going to be Grant Calcaterra, the dude that you just drafted? Is it going to be somebody else? Is it going to be someone like, is this JJ going to be that guy? I don't even know. Because that's why I really want to see the guys go out into training camp and have these battles and go into preseason and get those real reps against, other opposing defensive players. And see what happens, because that's really interesting. Because I think that since we're very much a running football team, or we put a big emphasis on running the ball, I think we're going to, whoever is that guy might not be the most dynamic pass catcher. I'm not saying he's going to be the guy that drops the most passes or anything, but if you can really block at a high level, I think that's going to separate you on this team, particularly when you're competing for tight end, because running the ball is our identity. We're going to be a great running football team. We're the number one running team last year. I would almost guarantee that we're going to be a top 5 running team this year as well, as long as everyone stays healthy. And Jeremiah said, yeah, we're going to be on tight end unless Calcaterra is that guy. I'm not big on Tyree Jackson as most. He's more unavailable than Miles. Yeah, Miles Sanders he's been hurt a bunch as well. That is Tyree Jackson has. So he was a guy that was raising eyebrows, the former quarterback from Buffalo that transferred over to tight end. So I don't know, man. Like, not having Ertz, we never thought this day would come where we would be having this conversation, but it's
Yeah.
finally here. And I think that this question does raise a lot of eyebrows. Tight end, who is going to be that second guy behind Dallas Goedert? Going to be really interesting.
Yeah, I think, with Tyree Jackson, we were trying to do a copy and paste, so to speak, with what Washington was able to do with Logan Thomas. Big frame, 6'7", former quarterback in his in his own right, and unfortunately, in the case of Tyree, he has already sustained two major injuries that can set a player back pretty far. With the ACL, and then I think he had a back issue on top of that, much like Jordan Mailata had, at a different position. But nonetheless, when you're a big target, when you're a pass catching tight end, how often you're subjecting yourself to those kinds of injuries, especially with the amount of contact that tight ends can be, that they can also be subjected to. But in regards to the number 2 position for me, it's an interesting dynamic, especially between Jack Stoll and Calcaterra. Grant is more of a pass-catching tight end, and Stoll is more of a blocking tight end. Now, those two are going to battle it out. There's going to be a pretty tough battle there, and I think it's just who is going to be able to, hone their weaknesses and improve on their weaknesses better than the other. Now, of course, Grant has something going for him in the connection to Jalen Hurts before Grant left the game of football because of multiple concussions. But they had a pretty good rapport in Oklahoma before he finished his career out as being one of the top weapons at SMU. He has the tools, especially for being a great red zone target, which you can expect the Eagles to hopefully be a lot more proficient in when you got a set of physical receivers that you can take advantage of with AJ Brown or Goddard. You throw Calcaterra out there, but I mean, this number 2 spot, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be entertaining. I'm not necessarily as worried about it as I used to be before, knowing that we have upgraded the receiver position the way we did. But nonetheless, you do need to try and develop somebody that can be as close to being competent. If Goddard is not on the field, but when is that going to happen? But yeah, no, I think I can agree with that assessment as well.
What's going on, Jadis? Thanks for tuning in, bro. Thanks for tuning in. So, I don't know, man. As far as with a tight end, I actually wouldn't rule out Richard Rodgers either, because Richard has been around the team for a few years now. He's solid. He knows how to block. He knows how to do business. He's a veteran. So, I honestly wouldn't rule him out and just have Calcaterra be like that third string guy for a guy coming in as a rookie. But you want to know something, man? We got to get on to our breakout player predictions of this season. Who's going to be the next Eagles player that's going to take that jump into stardom? What do you guys think? Anybody that has their prediction, leave your comment. Leave your prediction for the Eagles breakout player for offense, and then we're going to get to defense here in a few more minutes. So this is tough. I mean, obviously, for me making my predictions, I'm not going to say Jalen Hurts because, obviously if you're the quarterback, we expect Jalen to have a huge year. I think that's going to be most people's answer. But as we were discussing earlier about Devontae Smith taking the next step as a second-year player, Devontae Smith is my prediction for the breakout player for offense of this season. And I'm going to even take it a step further. I believe I saw a comment coming out. I was trying to keep a straight face, but as I was saying before I got distracted, I actually believe that both these guys, both AJ and Devontae, are both going to get 1,000 yards for this season, or pretty much close to it as you can get, because I believe they're both that dynamic. And I think the thing that's going to help Devontae is that he's no longer going to have to deal with, Rager being on the other side and getting beat up and getting thrown on the ground by a physical defensive back. If you try to do that to AJ Brown, then you're gonna get beat up, because AJ Brown is a big, physical, strong receiver he's gonna deal the punishment to you. Biggest thing that I think AJ brings to the table is it's not really what he does, getting open and catching the ball. He gets open, he catches the ball, but it's just like he makes that first guy miss, and then when safeties try to come tackle him at the third level, he's just big and strong enough to throw these guys to the ground. So I feel like having a guy like that can do his thing is going to take all the pressure off Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith is going to take that progression. He's going to keep getting better. He's already a silky smooth route runner. He's going to find the soft spots in the zones, and he's going to be able to dominate every single week, just like AJ Brown says that he anticipates that he will. Devontae Smith, my prediction, offensive breakout player for the Eagles this season. And Jada says,
I mean, like you said, Hurts is the typical punching bag here offensively. I don't think it would be fair to make him the breakout player as much as a lot of us would say that we would want that to happen. Especially for the people that were sick of hearing questioning at that quarterback spot, and let's just look forward to next year. No, let's be in the present first. Let's see what Hurts does with this upgraded offense first. I personally do not want to say Smitty either. I think that's another easy one, especially for what he was able to do in his rookie season. I don't want to say AJ Brown either, because that's another easy one. He's part of the reason why you brought him here in the first place, for that breakout, type of player that sets that's a tone setter for the offense. So for this one, I'm going to go with Quez. I'm going to go with Quez on this one. I think last year there was some underutilization for him, and that goes back to the lack of depth at the receiver position when you insert Smith as the number one, as well, obviously him being your number 10 pick in the draft, that you want him to be your number one receiver eventually. But I want to say Quez on this one, and AJ Brown has a lot to do with it. If you go back and look at the production of AJ on the Tennessee Titans, a lot of his targets he caught out of the slot. So you would imagine if you put a guy like Quez at the if you put him on the outside, opposite of Devontae Smith, and really utilize and take advantage of the 4.3 speed that he has, how easy it is for him to take the top off of a defense and put him in those kinds of situations, then it's going to pose a lot more of a problem than you thought you had in the beginning with using Dallas Goedert, with using Devontae Smith. And if you put AJ Brown in the slot, that gives Jalen Hurts another dependable target with the physical stature that he can hit over the middle and really help Hurts become more proficient as a quarterback of hitting receivers over the middle, because he did have some struggle there, whether it was short passes or immediate passes. We didn't necessarily question his deep ball all that much, but yeah, when it comes to that, I want to see Quez just burn numbers of corners, down the field this year. So I'm going to go with him.
Yeah, Quez, he is going to open up things for the other guys on the team as well. So that's definitely a good answer. You got to remember Quez is a track star. He very quietly had around 600 yards too last season. Most notably, he had like the 90-plus yard reception against the 49ers. Fortunately, we didn't freaking score on that drive, which stunk. But he was definitely making some explosive plays, and I think he's going to do the same and be that guy that stretches the field and opens it up for a lot of other guys too. And Jeremiah says that he thinks he wants Sanders to act up as well because, the naysayers around him. Miles Sanders being a top-tier running back would definitely take this offense to the next level. I know we've talked a lot about having, by committee type of thing, but Sanders definitely another one. And then Jalen Hurts, obviously, that's the most obvious answer. If Jalen takes the next step, he's going to take this team to the next step. He's going to take the team to the next level. And I think that we're going to be looking at the Eagles as division winners. With that being said, let's get to our breakout player for the defensive side of the ball. And I think that there's a lot of choices that we can go with here. For me personally, with the defensive line being the strength of this team as it has been, wasn't so much last year with the team being at the bottom of the league in sacks. In terms of sacks, they were 30th. Was not getting to the passer that much. Our run defense completely fell apart after the loss of Brandon Graham. So I'm going with Josh Sweat. Josh Sweat is my choice. Josh Sweat is a guy that we've already committed to. We've already given him a contract extension. Every single year for him, he has upped his game a little bit, and he's gotten better. He fell to us in the 4th round in the 2018 or 2019 draft because he had a severe, leg injury. And a lot of people didn't even know if he was going to be able to continue to play football after that. But he was. Yeah. And when he got in, the first thing I said about Josh Sweat, I can't remember if it was, I want to say it was his second season, 2019, because he wasn't getting a lot of playing time. But anytime I seen him on the field, I was like, Josh Sweat, this guy's a good player. This guy can really do some damage. And I actually think he's better than Derek Barnett, said of that at the time. And he was outplaying Derek Barnett. And then he kind of got to the point where they were inserting him into the starting lineup further on into his career. So now when you look at the numbers of his sack numbers, they've gone up every single year. So just based off of the math, you would have to say that this is the year for Josh Sweat to break out. And I'm expecting at least 10 sacks for Josh Sweat this season. He's a very explosive. Josh Sweat is he's so fast. Like when he gets as soon as the ball is snapped, it's like he's right there. Like he's just got that explosive factor when you're looking at him play, and he's always trying to affect the ball. He's always trying to get strip sacks, force fumbles, all that kind of stuff. He is active, and that is why I'm going with Josh Sweat for my defensive breakout player of the Philadelphia Eagles this season.
This was a tough one for me. Surprisingly, it was a tough one, and you already mentioned my breakout player, Derek Barnett. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to ruffle feathers. Man. Mister, it's always him. I'm not going to do it.
It's always him.
No. For me, this was between Jordan Davis and Davion Taylor. I will throw him out there. The reason being is I think we get stuck in a means of trying to define breakout player. To me, breakout player doesn't necessarily define one true definition of saying breakout. It could have different capacities to it. And in terms of Davion Taylor, who has had some bad luck recently and, with injuries and whatnot, but the team really liked him. They liked, especially Jim Schwartz. They liked him for his athleticism. They liked him for being able to go east and west across the field as blisteringly quick. And across of other regards. So I would try and put him in that category too, especially if he gets his chances. It could very well wean some of the other guys out. I understand that he was overdrafted and he was only graded, I think, as a 4th or 5th round selection due to his lack of experience at the collegiate level. But it was I think this was an analytics pick at the time. So don't be surprised if a guy like Davion really takes advantage of some of the opportunities that he could very well be given. Especially with not seeing Nakobe Dean on the field yet. Davion sitting on the wayside, seeing Kaiser White getting signed, Nakobe Dean getting drafted, us holding on to TJ Edwards. Not a whole lot of certainty at the linebacking core as of right now because we don't see them on the field yet. But where Davion Taylor left off before his second injury, he was really starting to improve. I don't think in the realm of Marcus Epps, but the two of them together were pretty positive stories that had some similarities. So I would love to see Davion Taylor as a breakout player, but the reason I mentioned Jordan Davis is because, well, right now we know him as a magnet for offensive linemen and being very good in terms of stopping the run. Well, it has been said, I think Jordan Davis talked about it a little bit, that he is expecting to get reps from 1st through 3rd down. And one of the ways he's only going to be able to do that if he improves his proficiency as a pass rusher. So if he really hones in on that and Tracy Rocker takes full advantage of, him missing out on some recruitments in the past and actually getting the opportunity for the Eagles drafting him and being under the wing of Tracy again, look out for Jordan Davis, because right now, a lot of people, questioning this whole situation with Fletcher Cox and bringing him back for $14 million on a 1-year deal. A lot of eyes are on Jordan Davis to really, take that spotlight of the future number 1 DT of this football team. But that's why I named those two
choices. Yeah, and you know what? I think to your point about him taking his next step for being a pass rusher, I think that when you look in this defense, it's the strength of the team once again. Yeah. I think the biggest impact signing that not as many people have been talking about is the Hassan Reddick signing. I think Hassan Reddick, he's had double-digit sacks every year for several years now. So he's very productive. He's always going to get to the quarterback. He's always going to be a great pass rusher. Brandon Graham's coming back. Josh Sweat, I mentioned that I expect him to be a huge part of this pass rush's success. So I feel like, that's going to open up the middle of the defense for Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, Jordan Davis, like you said, Nakobe Dean, anyone really that's trying to rush the quarterback, because you got so much potency from these dudes on the edge rusher positions. So I definitely think that it could open everything up for them. So with that being said, guys, we are at the hour mark of the show. We had another great episode tonight. So Lindy, do you want to just let the people know about your channel and what kind of content you're putting out right now?
Well, As we had mentioned backstage before we went on the show, me going through a couple of minor issues and my studio being compromised temporarily, but that should leave me back to putting out some content over the weekend here while I do, while I got some alone time with the wife away, aside from taking care of the dogs. But yeah, man, just another Eagles content creator over here, and getting some of my upgrades done. But I've really honed in on the opportunity given to do the podcast here. It's a breath of fresh air, something different, something more innovative for me to do. But yeah, you already know the deal. Philly Jim over here working on, I think working on 1,600 subs. He's on his way there. I'm
5 away, baby. So if by any chance somebody new, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It's totally free. And also tune in tomorrow night, the Gauntlet podcast, bringing you guys a whole bunch of stuff going on with the NFL, which we're going to get into tomorrow. And of course, you guys can always catch my personality. You guys can catch my Nick Sirianni skit. I'm gonna do this weekend I might do like a part 2 for that skit. So be on the lookout for that, guys. But in the meantime, really appreciate everyone that showed love in the comment section. We will see you guys next Friday night, same time, 8 o'clock Eastern, every Friday night, keeping you guys linked in with the Philadelphia Eagles on the Sideline Sports Network. And we'll see you guys next time. All right? Peace.